I walked away from a $2 billion deal because I thought my father was dying. But it was all a lie.
I used to be the one who sacrificed. But today, I'm the one naming the cost of manipulation.
14 hours ago, I was standing in a glass-walled boardroom on the 50th floor in San Francisco, facing the board of directors and our investors. We were hammering out the final details of a $2 billion IPO, a milestone that could define my entire career. And now I'm in an Uber in Austin, Texas, with a single thought screaming in my head. Please don't let this be his second heart attack. Mom, Dad, I'm home. Oh, Chloe, your timing is unbelievable. We just won a 10-day trip to Hawaii. The tickets are non-refundable, and we were just panicking about who would watch the kids. Perfect timing. Yeah, I was back, just in time. Just in time to walk away from a $1 billion deal. Just in time to drop $1,800 on an emergency flight without a second thought. Just in time to spend 4 hours on a plane with my heart in a vice grip, imagining the worst-case scenario. All because of my father's phone call last night. I can still hear his voice cracking on the other end of the line. I'm just a little tired, but the doctor is worried about complications. I just want to see you, Chloe. They didn't just lie to me. They constructed a perfect trap, a well-rehearsed play preying on my love and my fear. They bet that the responsible daughter would once again grit her teeth and clean up the mess they made. They bet I would sacrifice my career for their vacation. And maybe, for the last 33 years, they had always won that bet. But they miscalculated one thing. They didn't know that on that 4-hour flight, I didn't just bring my anxiety. I brought my self-respect. And this time, I wasn't going to just pack it away in a suitcase so they could have a nice vacation. The following story isn't just about a lie. It's about the price of manipulation, about setting boundaries of steel, and about an itemized bill my family will never forget. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see exactly how they paid for it. The silence in the living room grew thick, heavy. The smell of their sunscreen and selfish excitement seemed to suffocate the air. I stood there, in the same business suit that had carried me through 2 airports and a panic attack, feeling like an uninvited guest in my own family's tragicomedy. My expression must have been glacial because Jessica's smile froze a little at the edges. My father, Robert, cleared his throat, trying to regain his usual patriarchal composure. Chloe, don't look at it so negatively, he began. I really wasn't feeling well last week. Work stress, you know. Your mother and I just made the story sound a bit more urgent to make sure you'd come home. A bit? I repeated, my voice terrifyingly flat. A potential heart attack is a bit? And $1,800 emergency flight is a bit? My mother, Helen, rushed forward, grabbing my hand with a look of feigned concern. Honey, family is supposed to help each other. Your father and I have worked hard our whole lives, and your sister is raising 3 kids on her own. We really need this vacation, or we'll all go insane. You're the strong one, Chloe. We can always count on you. There it was, the familiar "Count on You" card. The card that made me miss my senior prom to babysit. The card that made me use my savings to pay off my sister's debts. And now, the card being played to make me sacrifice my career. Jessica, seeing her parents had paved the way, chimed in with a smug tone. Come on, sis, don't be so dramatic. It's only 10 days. Your job can wait, but a free trip to Hawaii can't. Besides, you're great at crisis management. Just think of this as a mini crisis. My chest tightened. They didn't just feel no guilt. They felt entitled. Just then, 3 little heads peeked out from the hallway. Leo, the 10-year-old with my same intelligent eyes. Sophie, 7, clutching a stuffed unicorn. And Noah, 4, sucking his thumb. Seeing me, they shouted, "Aunt Chloe?" and ran to hug my legs. For a moment, my anger cooled. They were innocent kids, trapped between their mother's irresponsibility and their grandparents' selfishness. I knelt to hug them, breathing in the sweet scent of their kid-shampooed hair. Jessica saw my resolve soften and seized the moment like a hawk. She crossed her arms, a smirk playing on her lips. "See, the kids adore you. And besides, you're all alone. No kids, no attachments. Watching them for a few days might even be fun for you. People without kids, like you, just can't understand the pressure of being a parent and how badly we need a break." Another knife, cold and sharp. She had turned my life choices into a weapon against me, twisted my independence into an obligation to serve her selfishness. Any argument after that was pointless. They took my silence as agreement. The handover took all of 5 minutes. Jessica handed me a crumpled napkin. Scrawled on it were a few lines. "Leo school at 8. Sophie pick up at 3. Noah home. They like pasta." "What about medications? Allergies? The doctor's number? Emergency contacts?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Jessica waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, they're healthy as horses. You worry too much. Oh, and for money, just cover everything for now. We'll pay you back later. You make that good San Francisco salary, right?" Before I could respond, my father rushed them. "Come on, it's almost time to leave for the airport. Bye, grandkids. Be good. Listen to your Aunt Chloe." They blew hasty kisses at the children, pulling their suitcases toward the door, their excitement for a tropical paradise erasing any trace of guilt from their faces. As the door was about to close, my mother looked back with a smile. "Don't call unless it's a real emergency, honey." The door slammed shut, the sound of a car starting, then fading away. The house was suddenly, eerily quiet. I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by 3 children staring up at me. In my hand was the crumpled napkin, the only guide for the next 10 days. I looked around at the messy house, toys strewn across the floor, dishes piled in the sink. The harsh reality hit me like a tidal wave. I'd been left, not just with 3 kids, but with the fallout of decades of irresponsibility. Just then, the phone in my pocket buzzed violently. The screen lit up with the 2 words I was dreading most: Ms. Albright. My boss was calling. The real nightmare was just beginning. My hand trembled as I hit the answer button. I quickly shushed the kids and hurried into my parents' bedroom, the only private space in the house, and shut the door. "Chloe." Ms. Albright's voice came through, cold and sharp as a shard of ice. No greeting. "I need a clear answer. What is the status of the IPO project? The Swiss investors are demanding an emergency meeting tomorrow to reevaluate our stability." I took a deep breath, trying to make my voice sound professional, even as a hurricane raged inside me. "Good morning, Ms. Albright. I'm aware of the situation. This is an unavoidable family emergency, but I have set up a remote office and I am in full control of the situation from here." A long pause stretched from the other end of the line. I could practically hear her skepticism. "Chloe, I appreciate your dedication, but unavoidable is not a word in our investors' vocabulary when billions of dollars are on the line. I need the final documents on the potential investor list and the updated risk analysis on the server by end of day tomorrow. If not, I'll be forced to reassign this project to Robert. To someone else on the team. You have 48 hours to prove you have this under control. Understood?" "Understood," I replied, my throat dry. The call ended. 48 hours. I had 48 hours to do a week's worth of work while watching 3 children I had 0 experience with. I looked around my parents' messy bedroom, feeling the walls slowly closing in. The next morning was a symphony of chaos. Leo couldn't find his math homework and insisted it had been hidden by aliens. Sophie had a full-blown meltdown because I didn't know how to do a melting Elsa braid like her mom did. And Noah decided the floor was the ideal canvas for an abstract masterpiece using strawberry syrup. I was placating Sophie, hunting for Leo's homework, and cleaning the floor, all while constantly answering work emails with my other hand. By lunchtime, I was completely exhausted. The fridge was nearly bare, save for a few eggs, some cheese, and a jar of peanut butter. I decided to make the simplest thing possible: peanut butter sandwiches. The kids seemed to love it. I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, I could get through this. I was wrong. About 20 minutes after lunch, Noah started scratching his neck restlessly. He whimpered, "Aunt Chloe, I'm itchy." I looked closer and saw to my horror that his face was breaking out in red welts. His breathing grew wheezy. Jessica's napkin, not a single word about allergies. My chest seized as if clamped by an invisible hand. Panic. It was the only word for what I felt. I scooped up Noah, yelled for the older two to get their shoes on, and bolted for the car. I didn't know where the nearest pediatric clinic was. I just drove, following Google Maps, my hand gripping Noah's small one, feeling every labored breath he took. At the urgent care clinic, the nurses acted fast. They gave Noah a shot of antihistamine and epinephrine. The welts slowly subsided. His breathing returned to normal. When the doctor asked me about his medical history, I could only shake my head, helpless. His mother didn't leave any medical information. The doctor gave me a pitiful look, a mixture of sympathy and judgment. The crisis passed, leaving behind a hollow feeling and a $500 medical bill for a visit with no insurance information. We got home in the early afternoon. All 3 kids were tired and scared. I tucked Sophie and Noah in for a nap, while Leo sat quietly in a corner, seeming to feel guilty for worrying me. Finally, after hours, I had some quiet. I trudged to the dining table and opened my laptop. The screen lit up, displaying a cascade of unread emails and pending documents. The clock was ticking. I had less than 30 hours to save my career. I buried my head in my hands, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. I needed to focus. I needed to work. There could be no more disasters. But I had no idea that the worst disaster was yet to come, and it was sitting quietly in the living room, right next to my laptop. With a Herculean effort, I pushed all the chaos from my mind. For the next few hours, my world shrank to the size of my laptop screen. I dove deep into complex spreadsheets, delicately worded emails, and strategic analyses. I was in my zone, where numbers and data followed a clear logic, unlike the irrationality of my family. The children, perhaps sensing my tension, were surprisingly well behaved. Sophie and Noah were still napping, and Leo sat quietly at the adjacent table, doodling in his notebook. A rare quiet settled over the house. I had nearly finished the most critical update. I just needed to attach the final investor list file to the email from Ms. Albright, and I could prove I was still in control. It was an extremely sensitive file, the result of months of work, and for security reasons, it was stored only on the company's encrypted network drive, with no local copies allowed. Feeling my throat go dry, I stood up and walked to the kitchen for a glass of water. I was away from my laptop for less than 2 minutes. When I returned, Leo was sitting in my chair, his hand on the mouse, a proud look on his face. "Aunt Chloe, look," he said, pointing at the screen. "Your desktop was so messy and there was a bunch of stuff in the trash. I cleaned it up for you. It's all clean now." An icy chill shot down my spine. "What? What did you do, Leo?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice calm. "I dragged the junk files to the recycle bin, and then I clicked empty recycle bin like my dad does to make the computer run faster. Am I a good helper?" My heart hammering, I rushed to the chair. I opened the draft email, clicked the attach file button, and navigated to the network drive. The folder IPO Final Contacts was empty. Completely empty. No, it can't be, I whispered. I checked again, refreshed the folder. Still nothing. I accessed the network drive's recycle bin, hoping for a recovery. It was also empty. Leo hadn't just deleted files from my computer. He had permanently deleted them from the company server. I turned to Leo, who was still looking at me, expecting praise. I couldn't be angry. I just felt a cold, hollow emptiness spread through my body. Leo, my voice trembled. Can you go play with your sister in your room for a little while? Auntie needs to work a bit. He obediently left. The moment the bedroom door closed, my last ounce of composure shattered. I didn't scream. I didn't break things. I just sat there, numb, staring at the empty screen, the symbol of my unraveling career. I stumbled to my feet, walked into the bathroom, and locked the door. I slowly slid down to the cold tile floor, hugging my knees. And then I started to cry. Not loud sobs, but silent, hot tears, uncontrollable shudders as all the pent-up frustration, anger, and humiliation finally broke through. I had sacrificed so much. I had endured so much. I had always been the fixer, the cleaner, the responsible one. And where had it gotten me? Crying on a bathroom floor in Austin, having lost both my career and my dignity. After a long moment, I lifted my head and looked at my reflection in the mirror. A woman with puffy eyes, a pale face, and an expression of utter defeat. It was the face of good Chloe, responsible Chloe. And suddenly, another feeling rose up, stronger than the grief. It was rage, not rage at Leo, a child who is only trying to help, but rage at the people who put him, and me, in this position. My dad, my mom, Jessica. They had planted the seeds of this disaster with their selfishness. They had destroyed everything, then boarded a plane to paradise, leaving me alone to bear the consequences. I stared directly into my own eyes in the mirror. I saw the tears, but underneath them, a spark had just been lit. A cold, determined spark. No, I whispered to myself, my voice firmer now. I don't deserve this. I stood up and splashed cold water on my face. It shocked my system into clarity. When I looked in the mirror again, the woman looking back was no longer a victim. They caused this, I said, my voice now perfectly calm, and they are going to pay for it. When I walked out of that bathroom, I was no longer the manipulated Chloe. I was a woman with a plan, a counteroffensive, and the first step was taking back control. When I walked out of the bathroom, the air itself felt different. Or maybe I was the one who had changed. The panic was gone, replaced by a chilling calm. The skills I had honed over years in the corporate world, crisis analysis, contingency planning, and ruthless execution, were now surging to the forefront. But this time, the crisis I had to manage was my own life. First order of business, triage the disaster. Priority 1, my career. The file was gone. Remote recovery was next to impossible. The only solution was a physical presence at the San Francisco office, where our expert IT team might have a 1% chance of salvaging the data from high-level server backups. I couldn't do that from Austin. I picked up my phone. This time, I was the one calling Ms. Albright. Ms. Albright, I said the moment she answered, my voice even, without a trace of a tremor. I'm calling to report a critical incident. Due to a security lapse on my part, critical data files for the IPO project were permanently deleted from the server by an unauthorized party. I take full and complete responsibility for this. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I continued, giving her no room to interrupt. The only chance for recovery requires direct intervention at the data center. I have booked the first flight back to San Francisco tomorrow morning and will be in the office before 9 a.m. I will not leave until this is resolved. Between now and then, I need you to stall the meeting with the Swiss investors. Tell them an internal technical issue is being rectified. I will update you the moment I land. I didn't plead. I didn't explain. I reported facts, took ownership, and presented a plan of action. I had turned myself from a problem into part of the solution. After a long silence, Ms. Albright said only one thing. "I'll handle it. Don't disappoint me, Chloe." The call ended. Priority 1 was in motion. Next, priority 2. The legal and moral problem. 3 children. I couldn't just leave them, but I couldn't stay. I needed a reliable party. I scrolled through my contacts and called the one family member who would give me a straight answer. Aunt Judy. "Aunt Judy," I said as soon as she picked up. "I need you to tell me the truth. Is Dad really having heart trouble?" A dry laugh crackled over the line. "Heart trouble? The only trouble with your father Robert's heart is too much barbecue. Let me guess, this has Jessica's fingerprints all over it? Tell me what they've done to you now, Chloe." Hearing the genuine outrage in her voice, an invisible weight lifted off me. I recounted the entire story, briefly. Aunt Judy listened in silence, and when I finished, she simply said, "Chloe, you have suffered enough. You have to save yourself first. The kids aren't at fault, but your parents and your sister have to learn a lesson." Her validation was the final weapon I needed. The last of my guilt evaporated. Hanging up, I opened the web browser on my phone. I didn't search for cheap babysitters. I typed, "Premium Professional Nanny Service Austin, reputable childcare agency, background-checked first aid certified nannies." I found an agency called Guardian Angels Nanny Service. They offered fully trained nannies, experienced in emergency situations, and bonded and insured. I called their hotline. "I need a nanny," I told the dispatcher, my tone as professional as if I were booking a corporate event. "I need your best, most experienced person, starting at 7 a.m. tomorrow, for 24/7 coverage for the next 8 consecutive days. Price is not an issue." After providing my credit card information and completing the arrangements, I had a confirmation email. A nanny named Patricia, a former pediatric nurse with 15 years of experience, would be at the house tomorrow morning. The final piece. I opened my airline app. One-way flight, Austin to San Francisco, departing at 6:30 a.m. I hit confirm. The ping of the flight confirmation email sounded in the quiet room. I looked at my phone, the email from my boss, the text from my aunt, the email from the nanny service, the flight confirmation. All the pieces were in place. I knew that when the sun rose, a storm would break. The calls, the screaming, the accusations. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the storm. Because this time, I was the one creating it. I didn't sleep that night. Adrenaline and a clear objective had completely replaced fatigue. While the house was silent, I turned the kitchen into a command center. I wasn't just preparing, I was creating evidence of the difference between responsibility and irresponsibility. I took an empty binder and began constructing a care manual that would be the envy of any mother. I printed out a detailed, hour-by-hour schedule for all 3 children, from wake-up to bedtime. I documented their favorite foods and their dislikes. Most importantly, I dedicated an entire page in bold letters, "Urgent medical notice," detailing Noah's peanut allergy, which I had to get from the hospital, along with a copy of the $500 ER bill. I listed their favorite TV shows, the names of the stuffed animals they couldn't sleep without, and the songs that soothed their tantrums. I was doing the work their own mother couldn't be bothered to do. After finishing the manual, I sat down and wrote a letter. My hand was steady. Every word was clear, firm, and devoid of sentimentality. To Dad, Mom, and Jessica, I wrote, "By the time you read this, I will be on my way back to San Francisco. I am not writing this to argue, but to inform you of the decisions that have been made based on your actions. First, I was deliberately deceived with a fabricated story about Dad's health, causing me significant emotional distress and financial loss. Second, this action directly threatened my career, culminating in an irreversible data loss incident that was a direct consequence of me being forced away from my work environment. Third, and most importantly, Jessica's negligence put Noah's health in jeopardy. The failure to provide basic medical information is unacceptable. For these reasons, I cannot continue to stay. However, I am not abandoning the children. I have hired a professional, fully trained nanny from the Guardian Angels Agency to care for them until you return. She is equipped with the skills and information to ensure their safety. All costs for this service, along with my airfare and Noah's medical bill, will be itemized and sent to you for full reimbursement. I will not be answering calls or messages of a critical or accusatory nature. We will talk when you get back, on the condition that it is a discussion between adults, centered on respect and accountability. Until then, all communication regarding the children is to be directed to the designated professional caregiver. I signed it. Chloe. Placed it in an envelope and set it neatly on the kitchen table next to the thick binder. At 7 a.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. A woman in her 50s with neat hair and a warm but capable smile introduced herself as Patricia. She radiated a calm professionalism that immediately put me at ease. I spent 30 minutes on the handover, giving her the manual. Patricia flipped through the pages, her eyes widening in surprised approval. "Ma'am," she said, "in my 15 years, this is the most detailed and professional handover I have ever received. You have nothing to worry about. The children will be in the best of hands." Then came the hardest part. I called the 3 kids over. I knelt down to their level. "Aunt Chloe has something important she has to go do back in San Francisco," I said softly. "So I've asked Ms. Patricia, who is an expert at playing with kids, to come stay with you until Grandma, Grandpa, and Mommy get back. She's really good and has lots of fun games." Leo asked, "Is it because we were bad?" My heart clenched. "No, absolutely not," I said firmly. "This is a grown-up thing. You are the most wonderful kids. Be good and listen to Ms. Patricia, okay?" I hugged them tightly, then turned and walked away before my own tears could start. Patricia professionally took over, already engaging the kids in a conversation about making cookies. I pulled my suitcase out the door. The click of the lock behind me sounded like chains breaking. On the way to the airport for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. At the boarding gate, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Jessica. A selfie of the 3 of them on a beach in Hawaii, beaming with cocktails in their hands. The caption, "Aloha from paradise. Hope the kids aren't driving you too crazy. LOL." Their cluelessness was staggering. I took a deep breath and opened a pre-drafted message. I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I just sent a cold, clinical reply. "For all non-emergency inquiries regarding the children, please contact Ms. Patricia at Guardian Angels Service Isha. She is the professional caregiver currently in charge. I am unavailable." I hit send, then switched my phone to airplane mode. The storm had officially begun. And I was thousands of miles away, flying toward my freedom. The flight from Austin to San Francisco was the longest and also the most productive flight of my life. There was no panic, only intense focus. The moment we reached cruising altitude, I had my laptop open, connected to the Wi-Fi, and was working like a machine. I mapped out a plan B, a plan C, and even a plan D in case the files were unrecoverable. I drafted emails to the investors, prepared dialogue scripts, and scoured old archives for the most rudimentary versions of the documents. By the time the plane touched down at SFO, I was no longer a victim of circumstance. I was a fully armed warrior. I went straight from the airport to the office. Ms. Albright had arranged for me to work directly with the head of IT, a tech genius named David. He gave me a sympathetic look as I explained the situation. "Deletion from the server and the network bin," he muttered. "It's a long shot, Chloe, but let me see what I can do." For the next 6 hours, I sat on pins and needles next to David. He typed complex command lines, accessing the deepest backup layers of the system, places no end user ever touched. It was a nerve-wracking process. My entire career hung on his keystrokes. And then, close to midnight, David turned to me, smiled wearily, and said, "Got it. I've restored the entire directory from a snapshot backup created 48 hours ago. You got unbelievably lucky." A wave of relief so powerful washed over me that I almost cried. I had saved it. My decision to fly back was the right one. After sending a confirmation email to Ms. Albright that the crisis was averted, I allowed myself to do something I had put off all day. I turned my phone off airplane mode. It practically exploded. A cacophony of dings, beeps, and vibrations. The screen lit up with an endless scroll of notifications. 28 missed calls, 10 from Dad, 12 from Jessica, 6 from Mom. Over 50 unread text messages. I skimmed a few. They were all angry, all caps tirades. "How dare you? You abandoned my children. Your mother is sick with worry. Call me back immediately." The phone rang again. It was my dad. I took a deep breath. It was time. "Hello?" I said, my voice calm. "Chloe, what in the hell were you thinking?" My father's yell made me pull the phone away from my ear. I could hear Jessica and my mom in the background. "I was at the office, saving my career," I replied coolly. "You left my kids with a stranger." Jessica snatched the phone, her voice shrill. "How could you be so cruel?" "I didn't abandon them, Jessica," I said, my voice now devoid of any emotion. "I ensured they were cared for by a medical professional with 15 years of experience, after their own mother left them to go on vacation without so much as leaving an allergy note. That stranger is more responsible than you are." "It was just a harmless little lie," my mother cut in, her tone dripping with self-pity. "Family is supposed to help each other. Why did you have to turn this into such a big deal?" "A harmless lie? It cost me $1,800, almost cost me my job, and it sent your grandson to the emergency room. In my dictionary, that's not harmless." I quoted my own letter, word for word. "I already said, we are not talking until you are ready to have a respectful discussion. This screaming and blaming is not a discussion." "You're destroying this family, Chloe," my father roared. "No, I'm trying to save it from its own toxicity," I countered, then said firmly, "I have to get back to work." And I hung up. I leaned back in my chair, my heart pounding, but not from fear. It was from adrenaline. I had held my ground. The phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't a call, but a text from another number. Aunt Judy. "Heard the news. Proud of you, my strong girl. Call me if you need anything." Another text popped up, from my cousin. "Heard you started a rebellion? It's about time someone did. The rest of the family is on your side. Don't back down." I read and reread those messages. A small, genuine smile touched my lips for the first time in days. I wasn't alone in this fight. The storm might be raging, but I knew that behind me, there were people quietly cheering me on. And that was more valuable than any career. The next 7 days passed in a state of strange tranquility. In San Francisco, I threw myself into my work with a new energy and focus. Successfully salvaging the IPO project had solidified my position at the company in a major way. Ms. Albright, instead of being suspicious, now regarded me with a new level of respect. She had seen me face down a dual crisis, personal and professional, and not only survive, but triumph. I had proven my worth in an undeniable way, but the real peace came each evening. At 7 o'clock sharp, I would place a video call. On the other end of the line wasn't chaos, but a scene of order. Ms. Patricia, with her quiet professionalism, had established a structure the children clearly craved. I saw Leo showing me a model of the solar system she had helped him build for a science project. I saw Sophie confidently performing a new dance she had been taught. Even little Noah had learned to put his toys in the basket after playing. They looked happy, content, and most importantly, safe. "The children are wonderful," Ms. Patricia reported to me. "They just needed a stable schedule and clear boundaries. Leo is incredibly bright, and Sophie is a gifted artist. They are thriving." Hearing those words, I knew I had done the right thing. My actions hadn't just saved me, they had inadvertently given the children a week of stability they had probably never had. Meanwhile, the texts from Hawaii had changed. After the initial storm of anger, they shifted to an awkward silence, then to probing messages. "The kids must miss us so much," Jessica texted. "Does that nanny lady let them have ice cream?" my mom asked. I didn't engage. I gave the same consistent reply. "For all details regarding the children's daily activities, please contact Ms. Patricia directly. She has the most accurate information." I had created a firewall and they had no way to breach it. On the 9th day, the day before their return, I spent the evening preparing for the final confrontation. I wasn't preparing arguments. I opened Excel and created a spreadsheet. Every line, every column was perfectly aligned. This would be my weapon, a weapon that could not be bent by emotion or manipulation. I titled it, "Expense Reimbursement Invoice, Family Incident." Then I listed each item, clear and irrefutable. Item 1, Emergency Airfare, Economy, SFO to AUS, booked under 24-hour notice, $1,800. Item 2, Urgent care visit for Noah due to non-disclosure of allergy, $500. Item 3, Guardian Angels, Professional Nanny Service, 8 days times $300 per day, inclusive of weekend surcharge, $2,400. Recovery service, per company invoice, internal rate, $1,500. At the bottom, a single number in bold. Total due for reimbursement, $6,200. I printed it out and placed it in a clean white envelope. The day they returned, I didn't meet them at the house. I asked them to meet me at a neutral coffee shop the next day, stating it was the only way to have an uninterrupted conversation. They arrived, tanned from their vacation, but their faces were tense. They looked prepared for a fiery battle, a screaming match of tears and accusations. I let them sit. My father started, his voice still tinged with indignation. "Chloe, I don't think—" I held up a hand, cutting him off. "Before we say anything else," I said calmly, and then I slowly pushed the white envelope to the center of the table. "I think we need to settle this first." My father frowned and opened the envelope. He pulled out the single sheet of paper. I watched his eyes scan from top to bottom. The anger on his face slowly morphed into astonishment, then disbelief. My mother and Jessica leaned in to look. What is this?" Jessica stammered. $6,200? Are you kidding me?" "This is not a joke," I replied, my tone as even as if I were presenting a business report. "This is the bill for the solutions I had to implement to solve the problems you created. You wanted a free babysitter, but your deception created a costly chain of events. I handled them professionally, and this is the cost of that professionalism." "You can't charge your own family?" my mother cried, her voice full of offense. "This is extortion." "No, mother. This is accountability. If a stranger had sabotaged my work, endangered my nephew, and cost me money, I would send them a bill. I see no reason to apply a different standard to family, especially when trust has been so thoroughly broken. I expect payment within 30 days. They were silent, utterly silent. The screaming match they had prepared for was useless. They couldn't argue with an Excel spreadsheet. They couldn't guilt-trip an invoice. I wasn't playing their game. I was forcing them to play mine, a game based on logic, facts, and consequences. I stood up, grabbing my purse. When you've settled this bill, we can begin to talk about how to rebuild trust. For now, I have to go. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving them there, with their Hawaiian tans and a single white sheet of paper that contained the cold price of their selfishness. The battle was over, not with a bang, but with the stunned silence of being completely and utterly disarmed. After the confrontation at the coffee shop, there was a long silence. No angry phone calls, no guilt-tripping text messages, just silence. It was more unnerving than a tirade because it showed they were completely disarmed. They no longer knew what to say or do when their usual manipulation tactics no longer worked. Exactly 2 weeks later, a check arrived at my office. It came in a plain envelope with no letter attached. The check was signed by my father, for the precise amount down to the last cent, $6,200. Their payment wasn't a cheerful admission of guilt. I knew it was an act performed with reluctance and bitterness. But regardless of the reason, the action sent a clear message. They had accepted the consequences. The boundary had been set, and it had been reinforced with an undeniable financial transaction. For the next 6 months, we had very little contact. It was a necessary cool-down period, a time for everyone to confront their own role in the mess. I focused on my career and was officially promoted to vice president. I started dating. I built a life in San Francisco that was no longer haunted by unreasonable obligations from afar. Then one day, I got a call from Jessica. I steeled myself for a request or a complaint, but my sister's voice on the other end was unusually hesitant and humble. "Chloe, are you free next weekend?" she asked. I'd like to take you to dinner, just the two of us. My treat. That dinner was the real turning point. In a quiet restaurant, Jessica looked me in the eye and said the words I never thought I'd hear. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice genuine. "Not for the bill. I'm sorry for being a terrible sister. I always took your sacrifices for granted. I was selfish, lazy, and manipulative. I didn't deserve your love." She told me that after the shock, she had been forced to take a hard look at herself. She had enrolled in a parenting class, started working a second job on weekends, and was even seeing a financial advisor to learn how to manage her money. "I realized I can't just expect other people to clean up my life," she confessed. "I have to pick up the broom myself." It was the first time in years I had truly seen my sister, not as an overgrown child, but as a woman trying to grow up. The change wasn't just in Jessica. When I visited Austin for Thanksgiving, the family dynamic was different. My father asked about my work with genuine curiosity, listening as I talked about deals and business trips. My mother, instead of reflexively defending Jessica, praised the progress we were both making. On the last night of my visit, when it was just the three of us in the living room, my father said, his voice low, "We're sorry, Chloe. We were wrong. Wrong to lie to you, wrong to disrespect your life and your career. But our biggest mistake was treating your kindness and responsibility like an obligation instead of a gift." That apology, delivered directly and without excuses, healed the last of my wounds. A year has passed now. Our relationship isn't perfect, but it's healthy. It's built on a new foundation: respect. Jessica still calls me for advice, but she asks. She doesn't demand. My parents still want me to visit, but they check my schedule first. They don't assume my availability. Sometimes I still think about that $6,200 invoice. It wasn't just about the money. It was a declaration of independence. It was an expensive lesson in personal boundaries. And that's the final lesson I want to share with you all. In life, there is a huge difference between supporting and enabling. Supporting is helping someone stand on their own 2 feet. Enabling is letting them lean on you until you both fall over. Setting boundaries isn't a selfish or cruel act. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the other person's potential to grow. You teach people how to treat you, and more importantly, you teach yourself that you are worthy of respect. My story has a happy ending, but it started with an incredibly difficult decision. If you are in a similar situation, feeling taken for granted, being taken advantage of, I hope this story gives you strength. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family or friends? Share your story in the comments below, because your experience could be the courage someone else needs to hear. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about turning the tables on life's most complicated situations. Thanks for listening.